Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts and partnered with Vertical Valor Magazine. Thank you to our special sponsor, Airbus, for making this recording possible. In this two-part series of the Hangar Z podcast, hosts Jack Schonely and John Gray welcome LAPD Chief Pilot Kevin Gallagher. The conversation explores Gallagher's journey from his early interest in law enforcement to his current role in air support. Gallagher shares insights about his training, experiences, and challenges of working in air support and the importance of maintaining high standards in police aviation. The discussion also highlights the influence of mentors and the evolution of Gallagher's career within the LAPD. In this conversation, we will discuss the critical skills and experiences that contribute to success in air support roles, particularly focusing on the importance of demeanor, training, and field experience. This conversation delves into the pressing challenges faced by the LAPD, particularly in staffing and recruitment. The discussion highlights the critical role of Air Support Division, emphasizing its necessity in law enforcement operations. Kevin shares his insights on the responsibilities of the chief pilot and the operational dynamics of the air support unit, underscoring the importance of effective leadership and support in addressing recruitment and retention issues. We also discuss his journey as a chief pilot, the redefinition of check pilot roles, the importance of safety and training protocols, collaboration with the fire department, the transition of aircraft fleets, challenges in aircraft replacement, and the evolution of simulator training. We will take a deep dive into the just announced partnership with Loft Dynamics and the acquisition of a new H-125 simulator. Kevin emphasizes the critical nature of training and safety in aviation operations, particularly in law enforcement. He also describes his plan to integrate the Loft simulator into recurrency training, initial training, and most importantly, inadvertent IMC training. Thank you to our sponsors, Airbus, Garmin, and Onboard Systems Hoist and Winch.
Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. The Hangar Z podcast is the first and only podcast dedicated to promoting and exploring the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Join your host, John Gray, Jeff Ratkovich, and Jack Schonely.
Still southbound, skidding to a stop. Stand by here. Looks like they're getting ready to bail. Heads up, guys, bailing. Okay, the guy, he's running through the house, jumping the fence, threw the shotgun, threw something out. Grabbing the shotgun. Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again. He is armed. Stay there. Hold your position.
4 on the stop. You're in custody.
Good advising code 4 on the stop.
For the 412, is that something that's staffed ready for a special mission? Or is it something to where you get a request and you downstaff a patrol ship? Or what does that look like?
So if we know there's something upcoming and really it's the entity that's getting assigned, like SWAT has something coming up and they think they're going to need it, they'll call us and we'll staff. If it's something on short notice, then we're going to have to scramble to get the pilots. If they're working, that's easy. If they're not, they're coming in from home and they're not on standby. So it's not ideal.
Mm-hmm.
It's not ideal. And there's only one of those. So when it's in for maintenance, we're in trouble.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Then the third of the special operations cadres is the fixed wing cadre, which is the King Air. That's primarily for the transportation of investigators, other department personnel, or like I said, prisoners. That flies about 50 to 60 missions every year, about 200 to 250 hours a year. That's flown by a crew of 2 pilots, and there's currently 5 pilots on the cadre to fly the King Air. And then the last special operations section we have is our formation flight cadre, which is for ceremonies and funerals. We have 12 pilots on that cadre, and there's 4 TFOs that are trained to fly in the left seat and also work as ground liaisons to whatever the event is that we're doing the flyby for.
Lot going on.
There's a lot going on, and all those special operations cadres are, they're all supervised by check pilots, which I can talk to you about more later. So there's a lot going on all the time.
Yeah,
and we have a full-time safety officer here who's he's almost as busy as me.
Yeah.
So because there's a lot happening all the time here, and you know that's why we fly between 16 and 17,000 hours a year.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of flying. If you're a pilot assigned to Astro Patrol and you for about a year, you're going to get close to 800 flight hours.
Yeah.
Unless you take a vacation, then maybe you'll get about 760. But there's a lot of flying going on. There's a lot of flying going on all the time. There's a lot of requests, and we try to handle them all.
Yeah.
You know,
It's hard. It's hard. Even when you're fully staffed and have, the allotment of aircraft, and it's hard then. And when you're not fully staffed, it's really challenging.
it is. The call load, the numbers for the calls and the activities that we go to are just mind-boggling.
Do you happen to know how many pursuits a year these days?
There's a lot happening all the time here, and that's why we fly between 16 and 17,000 hours a year.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of flying. If you're a pilot assigned to Astro Patrol and you for about a year, you're going to get close to 800 flight hours.
Yeah.
Unless you take a vacation, then maybe you'll get about 760. But there's a lot of flying going on. There's a lot of flying going on all the time. There's a lot of requests, and we try to handle them all.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard. Even when you're fully staffed and have, the allotment of aircraft, and it's hard then. And when you're not fully staffed, it's really challenging.
It is. The call load, the numbers for the calls and the activities that we go to are just mind-boggling.
Do you happen to know how many pursuits a year these days?
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, we keep stats on just about everything. So this year, leading up to about 2 days ago, when I printed this out, we've had 451 vehicle pursuits.
Wow.
So, and this year we usually average about 33,000 total activities every year.
Yeah.
And we're up at about 32,500 when I pulled this report this year. It's consistent. So
Yeah.
451 pursuits this year. Last year there was 434. Yeah. So there's a lot going on, and the air unit's involved at all. And we have stats for all of it, but it's busy.
Wow.
It's busy.
Yep.
So
some things don't change.
Right. And that just goes to, the mission. That's why it's a patrol car in the sky. And the other thing is, this city and this police department relies on the air unit. They're required to respond to certain calls. It's written in the policy and procedures, where some organizations, it's a luxury to have an air unit here. Here it's not. It's a necessity. They can't do without it. Right. Things change when we're not available, and the risk to the officers can really increase dramatically without an air unit overhead, especially in foot pursuits and vehicle pursuits. We spend a lot of time in these pursuits. A lot of them, we go into tracking mode where the officers can back off, right? And, drive a little bit slower while we track the suspect. But, the air unit is incorporated into all the high-risk stuff here, and that's to mitigate the risk to the city.
Yeah.
So it is not a convenient here. It is a necessity. It is an essential part of the operation here. Otherwise, we've been in existence since the 50s, and, there's been a lot of different political environments, mayors, police commissions, city councils, and most of them aren't very friendly with the police, but and different police chiefs or whatever. But they're not filling spots, not how, because they don't have any, but nobody's cutting this unit because they can't. Maybe they want to, but they can't. They can't. If they want the city to fall apart, all they need to do is just to ground us, and it's over.
That's right.
They can't cut us. We're an essential part of it.
There's no doubt. If you listen to the radio traffic for an hour, just the radio traffic, you will hear the request of an air unit over and over and over. It's the first words out of your mouth. And if you say 12 Adam 31, I'm in foot pursuit, somebody else will get on the air and say, get him an air unit. I mean, the words air unit, get him an air unit, get him an air unit, or I'm requesting a backup on an airship.
Yeah.
Those words just flow off of every Los Angeles Police Department's officer's mouth for a reason.
And now they have to have it. There's no backup out there right now.
Yeah.
There's not enough officers on the streets.
No.
So everybody needs their own air unit right now. We could probably field a third air unit if we had the personnel to do it.
Yeah.
Right. Because everybody needs, you can't go into these calls on your own. Right. So normally you're showing up with 3 or 4 units. They're showing up by themselves, and we need to be there. Right. To give them to let them know what they're getting into.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very difficult. So as the numbers go down here, our the need for us goes up, and we're starting to bleed numbers too here. So I don't know, something's got to change.
Yeah. Yep. You're gonna get called in the chief's office here soon, and you have to give that spiel.
Yeah, well,
Yeah. If you haven't already.
not much of a spiel. It's what's happening.
It's
just the way-
reality.
It's just the way
It's
it is.
reality.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So let's talk about the chief pilot job. You've been in it for 10 years. Let's first just kind of cover what are your duties and responsibilities as a chief pilot at LAPD Air Support?
All right. Well, first thing I just want to clear up is it's not a job. It's a lifestyle. So a job has start and end times. This is a lifestyle. And you'll come here and you'll talk to captains. They love coming here because their phone never rings when they get here, right? So, and then the reason for that is because it's my phone that everybody's calling. So, no, it's a lifestyle. It is not a job. Just to say my phone rings all the time would be an understatement. It's 24/7 all the time. Right?
And I'm really sorry about that, by the way, because a lot of the calls are from me. So
yeah, that's okay. They come from all over internally. It's and around the world. It's just a lifestyle, right? Which is fine. So I'm good with that, right? In fact, I enjoy it. You have to be ready for that in this position. Okay, it is not a standard job, and the reason for that is because of your responsibilities. I mean, really, the chief pilot in this organization provides professional oversight for all department-related aviation operations, which is everything that happens here in this division. So, I mean, you have to provide direct oversight for all the flight operations, aircraft maintenance, flight training, all in and of each one in and of those of itself is a huge job. Put all three of those together. You're responsible for setting the standards and training everybody to the standards. You're responsible for the safety, pilot proficiency, making sure that the organization's adhering to all the best practices within the industry or higher. You got to make sure the command pilots receive their proficiency evaluation flights, known as check rides. You're responsible for selecting and training new pilots, responsible for providing the tactical flight officers with their emergency flight training or training pilots to do that. Training and selecting instructor pilots, check pilots. I sit in on the orals interviews for the command pilot position. Of course, I have to work day to day with the safety officer. We share an office together, and there's a normal chain of command here in the organization, but I have a direct line to the captain. So does the chief TFO, and as does the safety officer. So that's an indication when you're looking at the responsibility in the organization. So I participate with the safety officer on the safety committee. I provide flight instruction when needed, outside of some of the specialized positions. All the pilots that are in the flight training program have to go through the chief pilot for phase checks in different phases in their training. A lot of instrument and proficiency checks, NVG proficiency checks, all the oversight of all the special operations cadres, all the training to get pilots trained up on there, and all of the mission profiles that we fly. I have to work with the SWAT guys to develop the tactics and how we're going to get them on and off the helicopter to make sure that we're doing it as safely as we can in the way that they need it to get done. Responsible for all the rules and regulations in the organization as it relates to aviation, any manuals or policies, the checklists on board the aircraft. And I'm also responsible for requesting funds for training, equipment. And I also review all the risk assessments, the elevated ones, right? The ones that go beyond a certain level, the watch commander can review after a certain level. Then I got to come to me and the safety officer for review. I think that's just a summary of it. But
Wow,
there's a lot going on, and it happens all the time. And a lot of that's happening while I'm not here. So yeah. So
that's the phone calls.
The phone calls and thus the lifestyle. So
yes,
and it's my family knows. So
yeah.
There's a lot going on.
Let me just add that Kevin mentioned, being responsible for the check rides and that, and it's still quarterly check rides, correct?
Whether your mission is saving lives or servicing high-value assets, Onboard Systems hoist stays ready to assist. Features such as single-point payout reduce the potential for hoist-induced load swings, enhancing overall safety. For more information, go to hoist-winch.onboardsystems.com.
Sure. So that's how it all started. On week one of my selection into this position was a check ride audit that the commanding officer did not like, and then that's where that's what happened, right? So 10 years ago, um, we had a commanding officer, and it's the last commanding officer we had who actually worked at air support as a supervisor and a pilot. So he was actually up in the police headquarters, and it's rare that we have somebody up there. It's better when we do, because then when we have somebody that knows what's actually happening at air support, and we don't have to explain things over and over again, because they understand. Well, he initiated an audit of the pilot proficiency evaluation flights known as check rides here, right around the same time the prior chief pilot was retiring. He kind of retired on short notice. And the audit was horrifying. At the time, the requirement for check rides were every 180 days, but there was a 180-day grace period. So you could go over a year without a check ride. When it came time, as that audit was going on, it came time for the division to select a new chief pilot. The commander decided to take over the selection process. And he actually sat on the board. I've never seen a commander sit on an oral for police officer 3 position, but he did, along with some captains, lieutenants, chief pilots from the fire department or whatever. So he was not happy with the direction of the organization, and he made it known by his presence on the chief pilot selection process. And then when I was selected, they called me into the office and dropped that audit on me, and he wanted it fixed yesterday. So wow. That's how it all started. That was my first introduction to the job, was having Commander Williams tell me that this is never going to happen again. So I did increase the check ride requirements to quarterly, and I did have to redefine the role and the training and the qualifications of what a check pilot was at air support. And I think you remember, Jack, because you were here and you were in the middle of that as what we used to call a check pilot then to what they do now is a lot different.
Yes.
Right. So that's where it all started, is with this audit. And the biggest task I had ahead of me was, defining what a check pilot was going to be in terms of what kind of certificates and ratings they were going to have, what their duties and responsibilities were going to be, and what were going to be the qualifications to be a check pilot here, because that instantly now becomes the most critical position in the organization, right? Because they're an extension of what I have to do. And we have 50 pilots at any given time, and quarterly check rides 200 a year. I can't do 200 check rides a year.
Jeez.
Right. So that's how it all started. Redefining the role of the check pilots, and now check pilots have to have instrument and instrument instructor ratings. They'll all get their gold seal CFI because they have to teach in the flight school downstairs, and they'll eventually get their ATP rating. So they have to be consummate professionals when it comes to teaching. They have to know everything, and they have to teach in the flight school. Before they achieve check pilot status, they have to get somebody off to the FAA, at least one pilot recommended off to the FAA where they pass a check ride in their first time. But it doesn't take long for them to get 10, and they're getting a gold seal CFI because we train all the time here in our flight schools year round, and it's been full for the past 10 years. We've had as many as 9 students in there. They also have to be trained as functional check pilots to do all the maintenance test flights. So they'll attend a 1-month maintenance training program that I had to design out at our maintenance facility at Van Nuys. And they'll also receive factory training from Airbus. They'll go through the Airbus H125 maintenance flight procedures course. I'll either bring the instructors from Airbus here, or we'll send them to Grand Prairie. So in addition to being, instructors, they also have to be, maintenance test pilots. And those two actually blend well together, because you're a better instructor when you're also a functional check pilot, because you really understand the systems, right? It definitely helps. And they have to teach in the flight school, and they also, safety is a big thing here. So if they don't have, a degree or a safety certificate or equivalent, they have to be working towards one. So as soon as we get them identified and we put them in the check pilot selection process, off they go to USC, Viterbi School of Engineering Aviation Safety School. So they're all going to get their aviation safety certificate. So redefining the role of the check pilots here was really what started it all, and I'm glad I did, because that's what's keeping it all together.
Yeah. And how many check pilots?
I have currently 7 that are signed off, 2 that are in the process. It takes about 2 to 3 years to complete all the requirements. From the time they start the process, which starts with a 2-week instructor pilot school. And they come out of the school, and if they get through the school, they're either recommended to continue to be developed as a check pilot, or they're recommended to try again at another time. From then until they're actually signed off, it takes about 2 to 3 years, depending upon funding. And one of the things that takes the longest is they have to teach in the flight school downstairs.
Yeah, that's time consuming.
So, it's time consuming, but there's a lot, but you can't rush that because their role is so critical, especially, we'll get to it later. We do a lot of, all our check rides are with full down emergency procedures, right? Yep. So it gets to be some of the most dangerous things that we do here. So that's where it all started. And along with that, I had to come up with some techniques for check pilots to survive in that environment when they're doing full down emergency procedures all the time. And I developed a course on setting recovery parameters, which basically teaches the check pilot how to recognize a failed or failing maneuver before it's too late for them to recover the aircraft. Right. And that's what I call personal recovery parameters. And that's a pretty significant part of their training. It starts in the instructor pilot school, and it's something that they have to, live by. They'll live or die by those parameters in our operation, because we do everything down to the ground. We don't do power recoveries, right? So a few other changes that came about early on was we train the fire department now. So their first flight training is through our flight school. That started off as something that we did without asking anybody. We thought it'd be better to ask for forgiveness rather than permission, and quickly became successful. And the city's personnel department made it a formal part of the selection process. So that process was formalized. When I was an instructor for the 3 years prior to be a chief pilot, the firemen started coming through our training. Yeah, and it's been an excellent experience for both organizations since. We love doing it. I can't remember how many we've trained now, maybe 14, 15, I don't know. They all come through us now, and then they go off to finish their training with the fire department. Yeah. So and we have a great relationship with the fire department over there. We're close with their chief pilot, Scott Davison. He retired. Now Dan Child. It's great. It's a great organization.
Who's there now?
Dan Child. Yeah, okay. Dan Child is the pilot 5 over there, their chief pilot.
Scott Davidson was great to work with.
Yep.
What a gem. I saw him at HAI, now VAI, but HAI this past year, right before his retirement. And I just thanked him for everything he did, because you'll confirm that the relationship between LA Fire and LAPD aviation units was not a good one for a long time. And Scott had a big part of changing that. And it's all for the better for both organizations. We benefited from them. They benefited from us. It's a mutual benefit for sure that wasn't there for a long time prior.
Yeah. If you didn't know that, you would never expect that the way the relationship is right now. If you didn't know that the relationship wasn't good years ago, you would have never even imagined that, because it's nothing like that now at all.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's great.
But Scott was so easy to work with. He's just a good man,
Yeah, he was great, and good replacement. Dan Child's great.
Good.
So
good
he's
for
great.
Dan,
He's great to work with. So yeah, and he's off to a great start.
I'd like to go back and go back to 125 or the A-Star B2, the combination of the two, and talk about that a little bit. Coming from Ontario, we flew both the 125 and the B2. The B2 is no longer part of Ontario's fleet. In fact, I only had, maybe 50 hours in the B2 before we transitioned to the 125s. But
That's great.
I think it's become, at least on the West Coast, I would say, kind of the gold standard of law enforcement aviation aircraft. I think most law enforcement agencies that are focused on patrol have incorporated the 125 into their fleet. Can you talk about your guys' decision to go with 125 and maybe some of your personal preferences when it comes to that aircraft?
Yeah, sure. So we had a mixed fleet of Bell 206s and AS350 B2s, right? We started flying the A-Stars in 1988, but our flight school was primarily, all the flight training was done in the 206s, and later on, months and months after training, you transition into the A-Star. As we were trying to standardize our fleet, right, which and standardize is a relevant term, but trying to make our mission aircraft the same, and there's a lot of challenges to doing that, especially at the rate at which the city replaces aircraft. But the first step was to get the 206 out of the flight school and start training with the A-Star. in anticipation that we're going to lose the 206s, and as aircraft were being replaced in 2014, we started buying the H-125s. So the 206 had to come out of the flight school, and we had to start doing initial training in an AS350 B2. So that was something that consumed a lot of my time, right? Because we could call around, but there wasn't anybody doing initial flight training in an AS350 B2, right? So I don't know, did that answer your question there, John?
Yeah.
The B3. There's a long way around to get to the point where I wish we had 16 B3s.
Yeah, I love the B3s. They're great, capable aircraft for what we're doing. And Jack, I'll ask you. When you went from the Jet Ranger to the 125, what was your initial thought, and what was your overall thought on flying the 125?
Well, it was going from the Jet Ranger to the B2,
right?
And it was thrilling. I mean, it was like, oh my gosh, this is so different, so much better to be in that A-Star. And then went to factory school within about 100 hours of the transition in LA. And then that expanded your, knowledge and abilities and experience and understanding it even more. It's a great platform. And I'm proud to say that I was one of the people that agreed with Kevin that you could absolutely train in that aircraft. Absolutely. We laughed about it. The people that were arguing it and their excuses they were using, we just look at each other and go, seriously? That's what you think the problem is? I'm so glad that they switched to it. It just makes sense. It was common sense. It was efficient. It was economical. And it was the right thing to do. Just be the common sense part. That's what they're going to be flying. I mean, why not teach them on that? They'll know it even better. But I love that aircraft. It's a great law enforcement platform. Always has been. And it's just improved over the years. And they just make it better and better. And I left right at the time when the B3E was showing up, and I didn't get to experience that. That was right
when I think I went to pick one up just as I was finished the selection process for the chief pilot. I flew to Texas to pick up the first one. Yep. That was late in 2014, just before I was officially in this seat here. That was our first one. So, and like I said, we've been flying the A-Star since 1988, and we took delivery of that first H-125 in 2014. They've come a long way, right? We love the aircraft. It's incredibly capable. The B-2 is very capable. The H-125 was incredibly capable for the mission. The mission profile, it has a different engine. It's got an improved power.
Well, the time is flying by here, so we've got to get to a big topic here. This is a game changer. I've heard that term used, I think, even by our guest. Let's talk about simulators. Briefly give us the evolution of simulator training, with LAPD air support, and ending with the big change that just occurred with Loft Dynamics.
We started flying, our first exposure to flight simulators outside of the King Air and the medium lift aircraft. So we're talking about the line pilots. So we have, simulator requirements for all our pilots, but the A-Star one was the hardest one to get started because there wasn't a full motion sim out there until Airbus put one together. So we started flying the sim at Airbus in Grand Prairie. I can't remember the year we started flying it, but we would dry lease it and send our instructor down with pilots. We'd send an instructor down for a week and cycle pilots in and out of there for the week's time. And that was our first introduction for everybody with flight simulator training. And really that was all we could have. I think, flight safety started to work on one, but it was in Arizona. And at the time, the city couldn't do business with Arizona. So that wasn't an option for us. So sending pilots and dry leasing the factory sim in Grand Prairie is where it all started. And the goal was annually, but it was really as funding would support.
Yeah.
Then in 2018, I started working closely with flight safety. It was the end of 2017, and they were bringing their AS350 B3 sim online in Denver. They were building it. They built their sims in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. They called me and asked me if I would fly to Broken Arrow, Oklahoma to fly the simulator and give them some feedback on it. and they wanted me to take another experienced pilot. So we had plans to fly to Broken Arrow and fly that sim, but then they called back and said, why don't you just wait till we install it in Denver, because we got to take it apart and put it back together to get it to Denver, and we'd have to do all the flights over again. So at that time, their AS350 sim was going to be installed in Denver for Air Methods, right? Air Methods is the resident at the Denver Learning Center. So it's their sim. It's designed based on one of their aircraft. So I flew out there with another one of my Czech pilots and worked with the flight safety techs and the reps there to fly the sim and give them some feedback on how realistic it was and what they need to make for adjustments. When you want to adjust something on a certified sim with the FAA, it takes a long time, like months sometimes. So they wanted to get out in front of it before it was going to come online. So we agreed to go out there. And at that time, the sim was not really slated to be flown by anybody other than Air Methods. In fact, they had it. It was their sim designed for them, part of their contract. And it was pretty much booked from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. They owned the hours. That was their contract. So I asked them, what's happening from 8 p.m. to midnight? And they said nothing. And I said, well, maybe, could we come out and use it? And then, anyway, we discussed a little bit more, and then they figured that might be a good idea. They hired some instructors, and we started flying the sim. So I would send my guys out there. They would do the ground school, 4 to 8, and then fly the sim 8 to midnight. And we go out there and do recurrent training. So we started using it. And the instructor they hired out there, he's still there, and he thanks me every day. He says I created work for him. So, yeah. So we go out there, and the instructor out there at flight safety is a guy named Arthur Common, and he's incredible, incredibly technical knowledge. He's an excellent instructor. His dedication and commitment are superb, and yeah, I feel extremely comfortable. When I send my pilots out there, he's an ex-Army aviator. He's in special ops as an operator. Then they put him in the aviation unit. Incredible life experiences. He's amazing. I look at him like he's an extension. He's my Czech pilot in Colorado.
Yeah.
He is amazing.
Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, and save lives and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
I would send my pilots out there, on an annual basis or as funding would allow in that sim. It's a level D full flight sim. We would actually even send our guys out there for initial NVG training too. So that was amazing. So, and then about 4 years ago, right around the time, this goes back to the industry working to introduce a new recovery technique from vortex ring state. I think you guys probably had Tim Tucker on here, right?
We did.
So we work closely with Tim Tucker. He spent a lot. He would be one of our primary examiners, and even more than that, his influence here. I actually modified our flight training curriculum based on my experiences with Tim and things that he taught, and the way that he liked to see things done. So the LAPD curriculum is actually modified because of the influence Tim Tucker has on me and on this operation.
He's amazing.
Yeah. And when he was working to change the rotorcraft flying handbook, right? First of all, to get the term settling with power out of there, and replace it. So, work just as vortex ring state as it is. He was also working to add another technique, right? And he was working with Claude Richard to do that. And, he needed to name it something to get it in there, and he named it after Claude. But so I worked with Tim Tucker. I actually had him. We were gonna add that recovery technique into our curriculum. So, like anything else in a big organization, to affect change, right? As a chief pilot, I can't just come in and say this is how we're going to do things starting today and expect everybody to buy into it. So I brought Tim in, and Tim taught the class on it, and then he flew with me and my Czech pilots, and then we introduced it into our operation and added it into the next quarterly round of check rides so everybody would be exposed to it, and it was added into the curriculum. And then shortly after that, I brought Claude here. And I flew with Claude and had him go out there and show me the technique. So because of that relationship, Claude and we still stay in touch. He wanted me to go to the HAI convention. At the time, it was HAI in Anaheim. It was about 4 years ago, and check in with a company called VRM. They had a simulator set up next to the Copter helicopter, which is another Swiss company. VRM's a Swiss company. And Claude said, please go fly the sim. And it was an R44 sim, but it was the first virtual reality sim that I flew. And that's how I first was introduced to Loft Dynamics when they were still VRM. It was through Claude Bouchard. So flew that sim, and they started working on one for the H125. I worked closely with some of their developers. And as soon as that one became available, I started flying. I flew it. And then right then, I knew that this had the potential to really revolutionize the way that pilots train. So I started in the acquisition process then. So like everything else in the city, nothing happens easy and nothing's fast. So that's like getting on a big hamster wheel and running and running and running and going nowhere until the wheel breaks, and then you might get a few steps forward. So finally, he's able to get the acquisition process executed, and we had a Loft sim recently installed in October. I had Loft send their instructor from Switzerland out here to train my Czech pilots as operators on the sim, and we did this months before we even got one. This is when it looked like it was imminent. They have a VR, an H125 VR sim set up at a demo center in Santa Monica. So my instructors all went out to Santa Monica. Their instructor flew in from Switzerland, spent a week with us, and signed off all my Czech pilots but one on as operators. Once that was done, we continued to go out to Santa Monica and fly that sim and start developing the curriculums that we're going to use once we had our own sim installer, because it doesn't come with curriculums.
Yeah,
they're just a sim company. They're not a training company, right? And which is fine, because we have a full-time flight school. I got Czech pilots that are all experts in developing and applying curriculums, right? So we started working on the curriculums, and we developed 3 of them. The first one is basically a familiarization flight, and the intent is to get somebody who's never been in a VR sim comfortable with VR, and then also to get them to realize that it flies just like an A-Star. It's incredibly accurate. It's a full motion. It's really accurate. So it's very impressive from a technological standpoint. It keeps getting better because the technology is continuing to improve. So the second curriculum we developed is equivalent, similar to like a recurrent training curriculum. And then the third one is for surviving an inadvertent IMC. So the curriculums are all finished. Now we have the sim installed here. Just started and getting pilots through the familiarization flight curriculum, and once everybody gets through that, we'll start incorporating it into the recurrent, and then it's actually at some point going to count as one of the quarterly check rides they have here. And then we're going to get into, and I need to get everybody through the inadvertent IMC before the June gloom hits here.
Yeah,
that's really important consideration. So we train quarterly, all full down emergency procedures, because the way I see it is the most effective way to mitigate the risks of, flying in a helicopter, or the risks and the risks that, are associated with the mission that we fly, is through training. And in order for training to be effective, it has to be realistic and offered frequently, right? If you don't have those 2 components, your training's not going to be effective, and it needs to be effective, right? Because it is the primary way to mitigate the risks of flying a helicopter. We do a pretty good job of training pilots on emergency procedures. We make them as realistic as possible. We do all full down emergency procedures, right? And there are some limitations with that. There are certain maneuvers you just can't perform in the helicopter, right? It's either too dangerous or impractical, or in some cases they're prohibited. So that to fill that void, we need the simulator. We need the flight simulator, and we would fill that void by sending guys off to Denver. And the other important part when you're talking about realism and frequency is when you're talking about inadvertent IMC. So my pilots are only exposed to realistic inadvertent IMC, and I don't mean foggles or hoods, right? Because that's worthless. They're only exposed to it in a realistic way when they get into a full motion sim when they go to Denver. And at best, that's once a year. And that's not by any means proficient, right? And I could tell you that from going from an organization that did check rides on an annual basis, and you're doing full down emergency procedures with pilots, and in a lot of cases, it's a near-death experience for the check pilot. When you're doing them on a quarterly basis, everybody's good.
Yep.
Even somebody that you would consider your newest or lowest denominator as a pilot, they're all good. Because when you do something on a quarterly basis, you get better at it. You improve. When you're doing something annually, just annually, you're lucky at the end of that check ride that you were even close to as good as you were a year ago. And then 2 weeks later, those skills have perished.
Yep.
Yeah.
So right now, we, like much in the industry, my pilots do not have the skills to survive an inadvertent IMC event because they're not exposed to them with any sense of realism and on a regular basis, right? It plagues the industry, right? So, who's good at it? Well, Arthur Common's excellent at it because he flies the sim as his job in Denver. He can jump in that. He can go to inadvertent IMC in any day. And really my point is because he has access to a realistic training device on a regular basis. This is what this simulator is going to do for us. So now I'm going to be able to expose my pilots to inadvertent IMC training with full realism on a frequent basis. And the goal would be to get them as comfortable with inadvertent IMC as they are with emergency procedures.
What kind of frequency is your goal, Kevin?
We'll see as we start to do it. I mean, I like quarterly.
Yeah.
Right. Because I see it be effective with emergency procedures. Like everybody gets to get better at it. So I'll see as I see the response from the pilots and how they adapt to it.
Yeah.
Right. So we will be starting, once I get everybody through the familiarization flight, we'll get through the recurrent training curriculums in there, and they'll start counting as quarterly check rides, and I'll introduce the inadvertent IMC as soon as we can. Now, it's much easier to train here than it is to send guys away, but still deployment's still a huge consideration here. I can pull guys away from the mission, but I can't have them flying 5.5 hours of patrol all day and expect them to, get anything out of a 45-minute sim flight in the clouds or with the engine quitting. So
right.
That sim's going to be super valuable for us. We're going to be able to continue to do all the full down emergency procedures in the helicopter like we do at the airports, but we'll be able to add the realism of being over a mission. We're working with, Loft now for the visuals and the graphics in the LA County area, and they're going to design areas where we normally patrol. They already have them designed where we can actually be working over a patrol call. They're designing pursuits for us and crime scenes and everything that we're asking, they're designing for us. So I'm going to be able to send guys out in a simulated mission, orbiting over a call, and they're going to experience a malfunction and they're going to have to handle it in a parking lot in the street or in a field rather than at the airport like we do here. So that'll add a sense of realism that I can't create, at the local airports.
That's right.
Right.
So the proficiency levels are going to go up the more we use this thing, and the technology is really improving. And we're working with them, and they're going to work on adding the Tyler benches so we can fly our sniper profiles in the sim. They have NVG capabilities now. The technology is limitless, and they're working with us to focus it on our mission. Their engineering reps have been here in this organization. We've taken them up and show them what we need from a helicopter standpoint when they develop what we need for our mission profiles. They've been super responsive. They send guys over from Switzerland. They spend time with us here, and they go back and start working on ways to improve the sim and help meet our mission.
How is it going to fit into initial flight training? Is that part of which one of the curriculums, or is that going to be a separate curriculum that you're going to work on later? How does that fit in?
Yeah. So it is going to fit in there. And one of the other things that Loft is working on with us here is these sims are certified by the FAA's level 5 flight training devices, but each sim has to be certified individually. So we're working on with Loft to get our specific sim certified sometime soon. When that happens, then I'd like to add the instrument rating into our flight school, but 40 hours on foggles or hood time isn't very valuable to me. But if this is a certified training device and 20 hours of that time can be done in this sim in a realistic environment, I'll feel comfortable that they actually know how to fly in the clouds, then we may include the instrument rating as part of the training curriculum. Right now it's there if they want it, but it's not required.
Right.
But I'd like them to do it. It's encouraged, but not required. This could really change the way we approach our instrument training, because especially if you can log 20 hours in this, and then you also, once it becomes a certified device for us, then you can log your instrument currency. You do IPCs,
Okay.
right? So,
Wow.
How will, and Jack, I might be taking a question out of your outline here.
No,
but
go.
How will this pertain to pinch hitter training for the TFOs? Will you be able to slide them in there as well?
yeah, so it does have the capability of doing that, because you can, these things get really so much potential that I haven't even figured out yet. But there is a way to do a demo flight where you can get in and fly something, and it'll record and capture all the movements of the helicopter, and it'll fly a flight profile as somebody's flying it. You record the audio, so if you wanted to verbalize as you're doing it, you can land, save it, and then somebody can get in and never actually have to move the controls and go through that flight profile as if it's like a flight lesson for them.
Wow.
Really cool.
See, I mean, as a TFO, it's so tough, and you talk about cost and time to put a TFO into a position where they're learning how to hover, they're learning how to do emergency procedures, all those things that you want to do, but realistically, it's challenging because of the time and money.
That's correct. So we send a TFO to Denver, and we send pilots to the recurrent school. The TFOs go as well. We send
That's
one
great.
or two with them, so they get a chance to experience it. Really, it's an eye-opening experience for them with the inadvertent IMC, right? So you have the first couple crashes, they understand that's it's the real deal. So there are going to be ways to incorporate them into this. I just haven't really got that far out in front, but it is a real helicopter. You do have to be able to fly it. You can fly it from the operator control station, right? So you can hand off the controls to somebody. But for somebody to just get in that's never flown a helicopter before, it's a real helicopter.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's a real helicopter. So there'll be ways to incorporate the TFOs into it at some point. I haven't gotten that far yet.
Yeah,
and we can incorporate them as we have a crew station for them to be on the on a headset to talk to the pilot. They can see everything the pilot sees. So we got them where they can work them into a call, right, from sitting from a station, right. So there is a way to integrate a crew into it as a TFO. I just don't have I haven't started working on a curriculum to actually have them flying it to do their EFT yet.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I just saw a post the other day about the Loft that they just, and I don't know if this is brand new or if it was brand new to social media, but they were showing the brownout and snow and whiteout situations. Is that something that they just added to the simulator, or is that in there?
That's a software update that came out recently.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, they have that.
It looked, I mean, the thing that I saw looked extremely realistic, as everything else does in that thing. I had the opportunity, you got to run me through the paces a little bit recently, and I was amazed at how real it feels, looks, everything. It's limitless, the things that you're going to be able to do in that. Probably there's going to be some things that you're going to do with that in the future that you aren't even thinking about now, because it's just the potential is within that machine and the software. Like you said, the software's just the recording mode. When you described that to me, I was stunned. I was like, really? And that is so valuable, not just for EFT training, but for a line pilot. You say, hey, that last auto didn't go that well. Let me put you, get light on the controls and feel this auto that you recorded earlier. And they get to feel when you started to flare and see it and feel it and go, oh, it's clicking now because of that recording feature. That's really, really genius.
Thanks to our sponsor, Garmin. From flight displays with wire-aware power line alerting to autopilots with hover assist, Garmin avionics solutions give helicopter pilots the safety of flight tools they need to fly with total confidence. Find out more at garmin.com/helicopters.
Yeah, there's that. And then just, being able to do the emergency procedures, as realistic as we can without, compromising safety.
Yes.
That's huge, right? Because like I said, the principle that I operate on here and that really everybody's bought into in this organization is that the most effective way to mitigate the risks is through training, right?
Yes.
It's the only way. But the training has to be realistic and has to be frequent. And this is both. This is both, right? There is no pretend in here. It is realistic, and we have it now, so it's going to be frequent, right? So that's really important. So if those don't exist, the training isn't as effective as it needs to be.
Last thing about the sim, recently at the Public Safety Aviation Disaster Preparedness Exercise, also known as the Chili Fly-In,
Yes.
that was one of the opening days that the Loft Dynamics Simulator, H125 simulator, was in operation at the heliport. What kind of, I know the response that I got from other people, but several people from other agencies flew it. You were there witnessing that. Tell us about the reactions that you got from those people, and then also tell me about the reactions you've gotten from air support pilots that you put through in the past couple of months.
Yeah, so when we had that exercise, all my pilots were flying in the exercise. So I offered it to Loft. I said, bring your people in. You run the sim today, and you can bring people through that you want to experience the sim. So they had a long list of people that were flying it all day from other agencies that were flying in and standing by waiting for their controllers to finish up before the flight home. So they were getting a lot of positive feedback. I've gotten a lot of calls and emails since. I have some agencies that want to come back and fly it some more, and we're open to that. They can come fly it, especially if they want to try it out. If they haven't experienced it, they should. We recommend it. The feedback I've gotten from my pilots has all been positive. My check pilots all love it.
Yeah.
Right? So they all love it, right? So because they're also looking at it as like a training tool. So they love it. And the pilots that we just started putting through from in the familiarization flight, they really like it too. So there's a lot less motion sickness.
Yes.
Is what we're experiencing here than in some of the other sims that you're looking at a screen, and really, you have the device to measure the distance between your pupils, and you can program that into the head-mounted display, so it'll adjust accordingly, and you can fine-tune it if you need to. And that seems to really help with those that are prone to motion sickness. So
I noticed that difference. I was one of those that went to Grand Prairie a lot as one of the instructors, and I spent a lot of time that sim, and I got to the point where it didn't bother me, but every now and then it still would. Whereas I've been on this simulator, the Loft Dynamics simulator now 3 times with the VR and the goggles. I don't feel any of that. At all. It feels you really feel in sync. You don't have that delay. It's very realistic. Moving your head around, seeing just the way it looks, it's very crisp, and I didn't feel queasy at all.
No, and one of the biggest difference with the visuals, the visuals are unreal. It's very clear, which really helps with the motion sickness. But the other thing that's really different from some of the other sims you fly is the depth perception when you get close to the ground.
Yeah.
Right. So when we're I'm in the King Air taxiing around, I look out the window, I feel like I'm in a 747, right? So when you get below like 30, 50 feet in some of the sims with a big screen in front, the depth perception is really challenging in the last 30 feet, which really makes it it's not that valuable to do full down emergency procedures in the sim because it's a big guess at the end. But that all goes away in a VR sim because when you're hovering at 5 feet, you look out the window, it's 5 feet.
Yeah.
So that means that the determination of the maneuvers coming to the ground is accurate. So you can do them with success and confidence, and that's really super valuable for us because we can do all the maneuvers to the ground. And it's just like being in the aircraft, whereas in some of the other sims we fly, it's a big guess, and the guys get frustrated, and they can't wait to come back and do them in the aircraft just because they didn't experience it very well in the sim. Like, get me in the aircraft, let me do those again just to make sure I still know how to do them. So that all goes away.
Yeah, that's really big because I wouldn't even do the autos in the simulators in the past because they just weren't realistic for that reason.
You get close to the ground and the depth perception.
Just after, a short period of time, it still takes some getting used to. It's not instant, but once you're used to it and you do a couple lifts, hovers, set downs, you go, oh, wow, this is very, you can find that depth perception very quickly. Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah. So what takes getting used to, what I find, is the VR concept, right? It flies just like a helicopter. So guys have no problem flying the helicopter. They got to get used to the visual, right? So you have a head mounted display, and there are some limitations on the field of vision. And I know they're working on another generation of head mounted display where the field of vision will open up a little bit more. So you got a little more wider field of vision, which will improve it. But it's excellent now. I think it's only going to get better. So you do have to scan quite a bit, not as much as when you're on goggles, but you do have to scan because your perception is not as it is without, if you're just looking, without the head mounted
Right.
display on. But once you can get used to the VR world, you're good to go because there's not much to get used to in terms of the platform and how it moves because it performs just like a helicopter.
Oh yeah, the feel of the collective, the cyclic,
Yeah.
the pedals, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible how realistic that is. And like you said, you get used to that VR, you're good to go. You're going to be very comfortable.
Yeah, and it takes a few flights to get used to the VR. That's why we do an introductory flight first with no challenges or anything because we want guys to get used to the VR, see that it feels and flies like a helicopter, and then they'll be because if your first experience flying a sim is no good, you're never going to want to train in a sim again.
That's right.
Yeah.
So the first experience for our pilots here, we're going to make sure that it's good, so they want to come back and train some more.
Yeah, the feedback was really good that day. I mean, Doug Brimmer from San Bernardino, Derek Alatorre flew it. The feedback from those guys was really positive, and they had never experienced that before. I mean, we couldn't get Doug out of there. Isn't that right, Doug? We were trying to get a restraining order, emergency restraining order. He wouldn't get out. He loved it.
Yeah. So it's initially when people see it, they don't know what to make of it. They're like, I don't know if I want to get in this thing, and how realistic can it be? And
I think the VR intimidates them a little bit. It can be. I was worried about that.
Yeah, it can be, but once you go in and you see what it's like, you're just, oh my, it's pretty impressive. So we have that now, and we're working, like I said, on the curriculum. The sim is amazing, but it doesn't train for you, right? That's only one component, right? So there's really three critical components in training, and one is the training device, whether it's going to be your helicopter, your sim, or your part test training, or PowerPoint, or whatever if it's a ground school. And then the second part, which is equally, or if not more important, is the instructor, right? And which I'm fortunate to have here. Excellent instructors, right? So I have the Czech pilots that they're all super amazing at everything they do here. And they need to be. And they're all critical to this operation here. If they all leave tomorrow, this place will shut down in 7 days.
Yes, it would.
Right. So they do everything that's important here, all the training, the check rides, the maintenance flights, the safety stuff. So they're a huge component of that. So they're the ones that are going to be applying the curriculum in that sim. So really the delivery method is equally as important as the training tool. This training tool is excellent. My instructors are superb. And we also seem to put out some pretty good curriculums since we've been doing it for so long, and we have to because we have our own flight school. So we have to rely on it. So those are the three components that we've been working to put together, and the curriculum will be revised over time.
Sure.
All that put together, fast forward to a year from now, the organization is going to be much better in terms of pilot proficiency.
No doubt.
Than they are now. And I'm really hoping to really improve the inadvertent IMC escape procedures.
Yeah,
that's really
the big one.
That's the deficiency, and it's a huge void in our organization, and I think it exists a lot industry wide. But I have focused on my organization here. Yeah, and this is the first time there's a training tool that's within reach that can really help organizations help solve that problem if you're up for it. And
we got to get you down there, John. Get an appointment and go see these guys and check it out.
It's open to you guys anytime you want to come down.
Well, thanks, Kevin.
We got somebody coming in next week from a lot of the helicopter publications come in, and they want to know the story. So we take them through and we let them see what it's all about. And hopefully the word gets out because it's a great training device.
It is. John, anything else on the sim that you want to ask before we start wrapping up here?
No, I'm just excited to see its impact in the industry, not just in public safety, but the helicopter industry as a whole. Look at technology and some of the problems it's solving. It won't solve the double IMC problem as a whole. Like you said, Kevin, it's a tool that I think will help with that issue. And I think we'll see as this becomes more available. My hope is we'll see some of these numbers start to go down. That the deaths related to double IMC incidents start to go.
Yeah. Well, we need to avoid it, but right now, if I have pilots that go out and experience a malfunction on board, engine failure, hydraulics, the first words out of their mouth aren't "oh shit," right? Yeah. They fly the aircraft, recognize, identify the problem, and then they solve it. I'm comfortable with that. But if somebody goes in the clouds right now, they're going to say "oh shit," and that's usually not. It usually doesn't end well. So I need to get them trained up and comfortable So if they get into an inadvertent IMC procedure, just like any other malfunction, they recognize it, identify it, fall back to their level of training, and solve it.
Yep.
And we're not there yet, but we're going to get there, and it's going to be this device that gets us there.
I love that you emphasize realistic and frequency, because I got to see that sitting in the back at the sim in Grand Prairie, is that, everybody could do it, but when they were away from it for a year and then they come back, the first time they went into the clouds, I'd say it was 50-50. I mean, most people, maybe even worse, but most people did not do well on that first one. It's because there was no frequency. The realism was there, but there was no frequency, and it's too long a time period. There were people certainly that could do it, but right there at your fingertips at Hooper Heliport, that's going to be a lifesaver.
Yep.
It's going to be a lifesaver. We don't know whose, but somebody's life is going to be saved because of that simulator within that unit. No doubt about it.
Well, that's what I believe. That's why I fought so hard to get it. Now we're going to get it up and running, implement it in our program here, and hopefully we can reap the benefits of it before I have to retire.
Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. We could go on for hours with you, Kevin. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us. So to wrap up, John, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just impressed with who you are, Kevin, as a person, and the things you've done for LAPD aviation and the larger public safety aviation community as a whole. Stuff like this, talking about the Loft Sim, the efforts you've put into developing that, in the hopes that it'll have a positive effect on the industry is huge. You talk about all the things you've been a part of. No project small, because you take on the hard things, and that's commendable. So thank you for your willingness and desire to tackle the hard things and to make our industry better. It's been an honor, a privilege to get to know you and talk with you, and look forward to coming down and seeing you in person here pretty soon, and hopefully hopping in that Loft Summit at some point again.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. You guys are welcome anytime. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your show here.
Well, thanks, Kevin. Any other closing thoughts as we wrap up here, Kevin?
No, I don't think so. There's a whole bunch more I could talk about.
Oh, yeah.
But I've taken enough of your time, so...
You've given us a good chunk of your time, and we really appreciate it. I mean, I'll just wrap things by just saying I've known Kevin a long time. I got to work around him, with him, and he's one of the smartest guys I know. And it was a perfect selection for that job, and air support needed him. He's changed things there dramatically in 10 years, all for the better. And he talked about how he did that. And you were very kind about that, because it is a team thing. There's no doubt, but you created that team and the format for which that team can work. Those check airmen and all that stuff that was formulated by you. The success of that is not surprising to me. And you're one of those people that is key to that division being as safe and as progressive as they are. Well done on everything you've done, Kevin. I love watching the changes from a distance. I'm not there anymore, but I get to see the differences, and they're all pluses, and a lot of it has to do with you. So thank you for taking the time to join us.
Well, thanks. Thanks for noticing.
Oh, geez, it's hard not to.
Appreciate it.
How can you not notice?
Yeah.
So with that, thank you everybody for listening or watching on the Hangar Z podcast. We really we feel very lucky to have all the guests that we have. We walk away learning so much, and we hope that you are too. Don't forget to subscribe and like and share the Hangar Z with your friends and family and coworkers. We really are going to try and continue to bring you quality guests and where we can all learn something. And we sure learned a lot today. Great. That was a great discussion. So with that, take care, everyone. We'll see you in the next time on the Hangar Z podcast.
Cheers. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Hangar Z podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories that promote the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Lastly, stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors. Cheers.
Thanks to our sponsor, Garmin. From flight displays with wire-aware power line alerting to autopilots with hover assist, Garmin avionics solutions give helicopter pilots the safety of flight tools they need to fly with total confidence. Find out more at garmin.com/helicopters.
Whether your mission is saving lives or servicing high-value assets, Onboard Systems Hoist stays ready to assist. Features such as single-point payout reduce the potential for hoist-induced load swings, enhancing overall safety. For more information, go to hoist-winch.onboardsystems.com.
Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, and save lives and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
Thank you for joining us for these episodes of the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts and partnered with Vertical Valor magazine. We hope you enjoyed our in-depth conversation with LAPD's chief pilot, Kevin Gallagher. Kevin's a true aviator, and as chief pilot, he has taken that unit to a whole new level of professionalism through innovative thinking, training, and technology. The recent addition of the Loft Dynamics H125 simulator will provide his air crews with incredible training opportunities that will certainly enhance safety. This quote from Kevin's very impactful for me personally, and I hope it was for you too. Training mitigates risk. For training to be effective, it must be realistic and offered frequently. Take that quote and run with it with your units around the world. It's a good place to start. Be sure to check out Loft Dynamics Simulator at Verticon in Dallas and at AppsCon in Phoenix this July. You can learn more about the Loft Dynamics LAPD partnership in an article that's going to be in the Vertical Valor mega issue, which is both in print and online at verticalmag.com. That goes live on March 10th. Hope to see you all at Verticon. Stop by the Vertical Magazine booth, 5712, right across from Pratt & Whitney. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. See you soon on the Hangar Z podcast.